On today's show, how did Lane Hutson almost slip out of the second round? Is Cam Allen going to remain a first round prospect? And which NHL teams have the best 2022 draft? All coming up on Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, I break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hadi Kalakash. I'm a scout and prospect analyst across multiple platforms, including this one. And I've got a good one for you today, brought to you by Bet Online, where you can find up-to-date wagers and scores for all of your favorite sports. Bet Online, where the game starts. So first off, we've got a deep dive on Lane Hutson and why he slipped as far as a 62nd overall pick and why he might have been the best value selection of the 2022 draft. Then we'll take a look at how Cam Allen went from a runaway top defender in the 2023 class to now showing signs of being a C-grade prospect. And then finally, we're going to take a look at the top 5 teams who had the best draft in 2022 and what that implies for their future in the NHL. So before we get into any of that, just make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. It's always much appreciated. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So let's get right into it with Lane Hutson. For me, this was a top 20 prospect. I had him in my 20s, my early 20s, within the final rankings of the 2022 draft when I put those out in early July. And I mean, this was a prospect who put up 63 points in 60 games for the US NTDP. 32 points in 27 of those games were against USHL competition. Both of those benchmarks are record-breaking point per game paces. No other US NTDP defender put up a better point per game pace in their draft year than Lane Hutson, and none of them put up as many points per game in the USHL as him either. Teams just weren't sold on what he had to give. And he ended up slipping to 62, where the Montreal Canadiens picked them up with their fourth pick of the draft. And so far, that looks really good for them because he has 8 points in 7 games in the NCAA as a freshman, as a 5'8", 5'9", 150, 60-pound defender, playing against 20 to 24-year-olds in college for Boston University. He's even been named October's Defenseman of the Month. So he's looked like a great pickup so far. His high-end playmaking and his puck skills are even more evident so far this year. He's been able to string together plays at high levels. He's sort of picked up the power play quarterback role. He's been sharing it with a couple defenders, which is actually even more impressive because he's not playing a full minute and a half. On that back end on the power play and is benefiting from that time. He's genuinely sharing time with Dominic Fensor. To have him, put up 8 points in 7 games like that, it's really impressive. You add on top of that the deception, the manipulation, the problem solving, the quick and accurate decisions under pressure that he's able to make. And you have a full package for an offensive defenseman. He has every single tool in the toolbox that you look for in an offensive defenseman when it comes to playing with the puck. And on top of that, he's already grown an inch in the offseason. He was clocked at 5'8" at the combine, and now he's grown to 5'9" officially. Lane Hutson has sort of a 16-year-old's body. He's a late bloomer, just like his dad, just like his brother. Funny anecdote, actually. Lane Hutson's father, Rob Hutson, actually DM'd me on Twitter after I put out a ranking when he was in my first round. He's telling me how I'm making a great decision. I'll look really smart in a couple years when Lane Hutson's a top defender and all that. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's his father. I'd expect him to say that about his son, but he was the one to tell me that he grew in college. He went from under 5'8" to about 6 foot when he got to college. Same for his brother Quinn, who was very short before getting to college, and then right now I think he's at 5'11". So they have a history in the family of being late bloomers. He even brought an endocrinologist test, a bone growth doctor test to the combine to show NHL teams that he still has a couple inches left of growth. And that his bone growth his bone age is behind his actual age. And he still has some growth left in him. So you can expect Hudson to add a couple inches to his frame and get even taller and all that stuff. But the main reasons he slipped, first, the biggest reason is the size factor. There aren't many 5'8", 160-pound defenders who make the NHL, if any. But another issue with Hudson that sort of turned scouts off is his skating's about average. And I'm not talking in terms of speed. His speed is really good. His top speed is excellent. The issue with him was acceleration in his first three steps. Those aren't as much strengths as it could be. Um, he's a player who struggles to get to his top speed. When he has a lot of runway ahead of him, he's able to get to that top speed and maintain it. But getting there quickly is the issue. And when you're that small and you need to be able to evade forechecker as well. But the thing is with Hudson is the way he evades forecheckers is by deceiving them into going the wrong way almost every time. He has a bunch of tools in his tool bag to send forecheckers the wrong way and escape with the puck, and not even have to struggle with contact or escape their grasp with his speed or any of that. He's just that deceptive, that manipulative that he's able to swing forecheckers off course completely and go the opposite way, with a quick head fake, a quick shoulder fake, all that stuff. The other issue with Hudson's skating is his pivots. He does struggle to pivot and keep up with players. So the thing with Hudson is right now he's really good defensively when things are within his reach. Um, so anything within his area of influence, he's able to control really well. He's able to get sticks on pucks and all that. There were a couple clips of his development camp with Montreal where he was going one on one against Yuri Slafkovsky, who again is 6'4", 230 pounds. And there was a specific play where Slafkovsky almost made it past him, but Hudson sort of made a last ditch effort and was able to poke the puck out of his reach. So with Hudson, whatever's in his reach is definitely attainable and definitely really good. But the issue with him is as soon as you're big and fast enough off the rush, you're able to get around him pretty easily. And as soon as his pivots and his acceleration are fixed, that won't be a problem anymore because a lot more ice will be within his reach and he'll be able to defend a lot better. And he's already working on that stuff, accessing his outside edges, pivoting, working on edge work when skating backwards and stuff like that. It's already something that the Canadiens have tasked their development staff with, sort of working on with Hudson. And another really interesting thing for me is just the scoring rate right now. So obviously, it's just been 7 games and he's got 8 points. But in the last 20 years, only three defensemen in the NCAA scored above a point per game in their draft year, in their draft plus 1 year in the NCAA. So that's Quinn Hughes, who had 33 points in 32 games playing for the University of Michigan, and Adam Fox, who had 40 points in 35 games for Harvard University, but he was playing against Ivy League teams, which are pretty weak teams still to this day. And the other one's Lane Hutson with 8 points in 7 games. So if he maintains this pace, he will be in the same category points wise in his draft plus 1 year as Quinn Hughes and Adam Fox. So the promise is there with Hudson. It's really interesting to see um, the ability that he has to put up points at any level. I mean, all his life he's been told that when he gets to the next level it'll be an issue, this will be an issue, and he won't be able to do the same things, and he just seems to prove everyone wrong at every level that he plays. And so far he's maintained that record-breaking pace that he set in the NTDP, against USHL competition, all that stuff. Now he's doing it against 20 to 24-year-olds, and he's at the very beginning of his development. So there's a lot of runway to work with Hudson, but he's off to an excellent start, and he's doing great stuff so far. That's it for Lane Hutson in our first segment. Now we're going to talk about Cam Allen, the supposed top prospect defenseman in the 2023 draft, right after these messages. Do you like betting? BetOnline.net is your number one source for any wager that interests you. From the NFL to the NBA to the MLB, and even NCAA football, UFC, golf, anything you like, they have you covered. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in depth analysis on every game on their website or app. They're, of course, a great source for all of your sports wagering information with live betting so you can keep up with bets as they unfold. They've got up to the minute scores for every sport out there. They're the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games and events. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online, where the game starts. All right. So for our next segment, I wanted to take a look at a prospect defenseman who's, for the longest time, has been touted as the top defenseman from the 2023 class, but who so far has shown some very worrying signs of struggle in this game, and that's Cam Allen. So Allen headed into this season um, with as one of the top defensemen in the OHL among draft minus one players. Last season, he put up 37 points in 65 games from the blue line. He led all Guelph D-men by far with 13 goals as a rookie. That was his first year in the OHL. And now this season, he's got a goal and 5 assists in 16 games played. He's on pace for 25 points on the season, and he's got by far the worst plus minus on the team. On the Guelph Storm with minus 16. The next worst player is minus 8 on the season so far for the Storm. He's throwing away possession aimlessly. He's gifting pucks back to the other team with clear options ahead of him. He's struggling to make good decisions on the puck when he's faced with multiple outlets, and he seems to focus on the first outlet he finds and go for it regardless of what's happening around him or where the opposing forwards are in the formation. And he just tends to go for the first option a lot. He's not really scanning a lot. He's not checking the surroundings often enough. He's struggling on retrievals. I mean, he really seems all over the place in all three zones. I don't see much purpose in this game right now, and it's very confusing because he genuinely has amazing tools. His skating is excellent. His shot is heavy. He's a tremendous stick handler. He's got a long reach. He can defend pretty well when things are sort of straightforward, one on one, 2-on-2 situations. He's pretty good at. But as soon as things require forethought, require scanning and planning, you see a lot of confusion in Cam Allen's game. So I'm going to keep a close eye on him. But so far, he's slipping and slipping hard. At the pace that he's going at right now, I would not be surprised at all if don't be surprised at all if you see him outside of my first round in the next update on my rankings. I've Every viewing I've had of him so far in October and November has just got me less and less sold on him. And I've seen rankings where he's in the top 10 at like eighth or ninth overall. For me, the top 10 is all forwards. I'm not, really sold on any defenseman in the top 10. Caden Price is up there for me. He's just outside the top 10 though, but um other than that, I mean, if you're looking to stack your cupboard with good defensemen in the 2023 draft, try to stock up on later round picks because in terms of top end talent, I don't see much in terms of defensemen even close to the top 10 or top 15. So I just wanted to sort of talk you through my rankings for top right-handed defensemen right now. So for me, Lukas Dragicevic is the top one. I've got him at 23rd overall right now. I haven't budged him out of there. 6'2", 180 pounds. Really reliable, really versatile. I mean, he can do a bit of everything very well. He defends off the rush pretty well. He defends in his zone pretty well. He's got some offensive upside. He seems to me like a top four defenseman. There are a couple of left-handed blue liners who I think have much higher value than him, but in terms of right-handed blue liners, he's the top one for me so far. Then I'd say it's Axel Sandin Pellikka, a Swedish right-handed defenseman who is excellent offensively. He has a lot of offensive tools. He's really gifted. Tends to struggle in his own zone and off the rush in terms of defending. He's not the most physical either, but the offensive tools are there, and I'm really impressed with what I see. And Hunter Brustevitz has grown on me a lot. I've had him in my honorable mentions. I think he's going to be in the bottom range of my top 32 when the updates come around. I've watched a couple games of him, and he's an assist machine. He breaks out the puck effortlessly, and I've been more and more impressed with what I've seen from him defensively with each viewing. After that, it's Luca Cagnoni, who's a right-handed defenseman who I think has a lot of versatility to his game on top of having offensive skill. But mainly the main thing for him is how good he is at identifying his options off the rush and joining the attack and stuff like that. Really good transition player. Then we got Miguel Turini, who for me is just a pure offensive defenseman. I don't like what I see from him in his own zone, but as soon as he gets the puck, as soon as he's skating up the ice, and as soon as he gets in the offensive zone, it's all green flags for me with him. And then after all those players, I have Cam Allen. So that's where I'm at right now based on what I've seen from him so far this season. If you told me last season that I would have one, two, three, four, five defenders, five right-handed defenders ahead of Cam Allen, and that's not even including the left-handed Blue Liners. If you told me that last year, I would not believe you. For me, Cam Allen was that good last season, and what I'm seeing from him this year is extremely worrying. It's extremely concerning, and it's affecting his draft stock. So expect him to slip and slip hard. He's not going to be in the top 10 or anywhere near the top 10 in a couple months if he continues playing like this. Um, and the main thing with him is, where did all this go? I mean, last season, none of this was an issue. Maybe he was playing with less pressure against lower competition. But I mean, Allen was playing decent minutes last season. As a draft -1 player, I did like his processing. I liked what I saw from him in terms of scanning, checking his options, making good decisions under pressure. And it seems like all that's just been taken out from under him. And now you have a player with a lot fewer tools to work with, to evade forecheckers, to make good plays. It's affecting his game a lot. And you know, I'll keep a very close eye on him to see what's going on, and why this is happening, because I'm perplexed right now. And obviously, I need a lot more viewings in order to wrap my head around what's happening with him. If it's a team issue, because right now the Guelph Storm is struggling hard. But for me, from what I've seen, Cam Allen is a big reason for that. I mean, he's being trusted with top minutes and doesn't seem to be making the right decisions anytime he's on the ice. Again, he's 8 points lower than anyone in plus minus on his team. And I don't like to use plus minus as a stat, if I'm perfectly honest. I don't think it's perfectly indicative of what's going on the ice, except when you have outliers like these. Um, for me, when you have one player that is way below everyone in terms of plus minus, it's either that they're playing 30 to 40 minutes a night and they're just seeing the brunt of the effect, and like no other defenders are playing as much as him. But he's got a deep partner, and his deep partner, when Allen is not on the ice and he's been doing better. So the confusion comes from me in the fact that, you know, this was a steep drop off. He was plus 13 last year in 65 games. Now he's minus 16 in only 16 games. There's something's wrong here. So I'll continue watching the Guelph Storm and keep a close eye on Cam Allen, give you some updates on what's going on with him and why exactly this is. But the inkling for me is he's trying to impress. It's his draft year. He wants his stock to keep rising, and every time he makes a mistake, he goes out there the second time and tries to do better. But when you try too hard, things like these happen. You start omitting the foundations and start going for the flash because you think that's going to get you sold to scouts. But for me, right now, he looks like a third round brain in a first round body. I mean, his skills, all of them scream to me first round talent. But as soon as you get between the ears, you're looking at a mid round pick. So again, it'll take me some time to wrap my head around this and see exactly what's going on and what's changed from last year to this year. But I mean, Cam Allen's off to an off start, and I can't say the same for any of the other prospects that I mentioned earlier: Dragicevich, Sandy Pelika, Brestevitz, Cagnoni, Turini. All of them have stepped their game up since last year. Hunter Brestevitz, especially, I didn't see much of him at all heading into this year. I didn't see a prospect who could be challenging for a first round. And now Brestevitz has made a very strong case for himself to be included in that top 32. And if he continues playing this way, he might end up being a top 25, top 20 talent. He's been that good this year. So it's still to be determined. There's a lot of things to sort of hash out for the season, and especially with the way that this draft is going and how deep it is. If Allen keeps playing like this, there are 45 to 50 excellent, first round caliber talents going in this draft in 2023. So if he ends up in the lower end of that, I mean, it's not just going to affect his confidence; it's going to affect the way that teams approach his development, and they might end up focusing on the wrong things because he's not actually showing the best of him. I'm really worried about Cam Allen, and I really hope he turns the ship around. But that's all I've got on Cam Allen so far. I'm going to keep watching him and see what's going on with him. But we'll head into our next segment where I'm going to discuss the top 5 teams with the best 2022 draft, and what that implies for each of them heading forward into their future right after these messages. All right, so for a final segment of the day, something I wanted to review for quite a while is which teams had the best 2022 draft? And to me, it really does depend on what you're looking for and what you would consider a good draft, because there were teams that didn't have a first round pick but did excellent work with their second round picks and onwards. There are other teams who had high picks and still made good decisions with them. And a lot of teams that I'm going to mention here really did the brunt of their work in the mid round. So rounds 2 through 5, I'd say, was their best work. Um, that won't be the case for the first team I'm going to mention, and that's the Seattle Kraken. They were one of those teams that had high end picks and did good work with them. So, first, getting Shane Wright at fourth overall is excellent value. To me, this was the best prospect of this draft, and he should have gone first overall. They ended up getting him at fourth. Now, obviously, they're not doing much with him right now. They're playing him about 6 to 7 minutes a night on average when he is playing. He's been scratched half the time, but with enough time and development, Shane Wright could turn into a bona fide top line center who can do a bit of everything and contribute defensively, score you some goals, play on both special teams. This is the type of player who's going to eat up a bunch of ice time in the future. So, getting at fourth overall, who I think is the best prospect in this draft, excellent value from Seattle. But what I really like is what they did after that. So, first, they got Jagger Furcus in the second round as one of the first picks of the second round. And to me, Fergus was a bona fide top 15 pick. I mean, at one point, I was debating whether he or Matt Savoy were the best WHL forward. Fergus was in that discussion for me, and it's mainly due to the fact that he's probably the best goal scorer to come out of the 2022 draft. So to get that in the second round, to me, is excellent value, and that's mainly what put Seattle on the map for me as one of the top 5 teams at the draft. You go down the line, and they picked up David Goyette later on in the draft, who for me was first round talent for sure. He got picked up in the late second. Then you got Ty Nelson, who for me was the type of player who was really polarizing. I mean, he had an excellent start to the year. He was in my top 20 at the start of the season, but then he dropped off massively because he started showing a lot of inconsistency, a lot of confusing decisions on the ice, a bit like Cam Allen that we mentioned earlier. So to get Ty Nelson in the third round for me is excellent value, because at that point, that's when you start considering players like these who don't necessarily show enough consistency, but have a lot of tools that you can work with and develop. For me, I would have started considering Ty Nelson in around the mid 40s range. So to get him, in the third round, for me is excellent, and the Kraken did a great job with that. And another pick I want to highlight that they made that I think is really excellent is Tucker Robertson, who got picked up later on. He played for Peterborough and had excellent numbers. Right now, he's at 22 points in 16 games since getting drafted. Yes, he was an overager at 19 years old, but he was one of the youngest overagers you can get. And I was really impressed with what I saw from him. I had put him in my top 90. He was one of the prospects I would have considered in the top 3 rounds. So they got him really late, and for me, it was great value. I mean, it's excellent to see Tucker Robertson succeed as he is right now, and honestly, the Kraken deserve it. For me to see them pick up this many good players in the draft is really promising. Moving on from Seattle, we'll look at the Carolina Hurricanes, who for me probably had the best draft overall, and mainly it's because their first pick came at 61st, and that was Gleb Trikozov. And for me, Gleb Trikozov was in my top 10. This was a top 10 prospect for me, and they got him in the 60s. So excellent value from Carolina there with their first pick of the draft in the 60s to get who I consider to be a top 10 talent when you don't even have a first round pick is excellent. Then after that, they drafted Alexander Perevalov in the third round, who I think should have gone higher as well. Simon Forsmark later on as well, who was probably a top 50 pick on talent alone. This was a very responsible, very versatile, and an extremely defensively capable defenseman who ended up going much later than he should have. Then in the hundreds, they got Cruz Lucius, who for me, the only reason why he wasn't available earlier, why he wasn't selected earlier, was because he was injured most of the year and didn't get an opportunity to showcase what he can do. And he's really, really good. I'm impressed with Cruz Lucius. I was sold on him the moment I saw him come back and play some games. So to get him that late was really good. And I think a very, very high value selection that they got was Vladimir Grudinin in the fifth round. Grudinin to me was just outside my first round. I believe he was 33rd or 34th in my rankings, and they got him well into the fifth round. Um, this is excellent value from them. And obviously, he's from CSKA Moscow, the heartland of Russia. And we know what's going on with Russian prospects right now in Russia overall and the uncertainty surrounding that. But man, if you can get, top 30-ish talent in the fifth round, you jump on that opportunity wherever they're from. And the end of the draft with a seventh round pick of Alexander Pelevin, who is a defenseman that I was actually pretty high on and I thought should have gone much higher. So to get, again, every single one of their picks was above, market value. So with the seventh round pick, they got a third rounder. With their fourth round pick, they got a first rounder. Like it's a bunch of stuff like that that really put Carolina on the map as, for me, the best team of the draft in terms of what they were dealt, the cards that they were dealt, the picks that they had, and what they did with them. It's excellent work from them. Moving on, we've got the Montreal Canadiens, who had the first overall pick, and I wasn't really sold on Uri Slafkovsky at first, but now watching him in the NHL, seeing what he's able to do, if he continues to develop his game and doesn't stagnate, this might be a really good pickup. But that's not the pick that made me sold on them as the winners of this draft. For me, it's the four picks they made after that. So first they had Philip Mechar at 26 overall, who I think was a top 20 talent. So they got him later than he should have gone. Then they got Owen Beck, who was a bona fide top 20 pick for me at 33rd overall. Then they got Lane Hutson. We've already talked about him at 62nd overall. Vincent Rohrer was the next player that I didn't think was going to be available that late, but they picked him up in the 70s, and he's been looking really good so far for the Ottawa 67s, as we discussed with Sebastian High in a previous episode. A couple other notable names that they picked up: Adam Engstrom, Cedric Guindon, who I'm probably going to be breaking down in detail someday. He's been having an excellent start to his OHL Draft Plus One campaign. And with their final pick of the draft, they picked up Miguel Tourini, who is Jordan Tourini's older brother, a pure offensive defenseman with a bunch of offensive tools, but not really much to speak of defensively. He's a good flyer to take with their final pick, and the Habs have made a tendency of turning their final pick of the draft into something interesting with Jake Evans, Caden Primo, and stuff like that. So I'm interested to see what they do with Miguel Tourini. He's looked really good, so very interested to see where he goes. Finally, we've got the Winnipeg Jets, who picked up Rutger McGorty at 15th. I wasn't sold on McGorty, but he's impressed me so far with the University of Michigan, so he's been a good pickup. Brad Lambert at 30th overall, who we dedicated an entire segment to in the last episode, discussing why he slipped as far as he did. He was my 11th overall pick, and he could have gone higher. Elias Salomonsson in the second round as well. Danny Zhilkin they picked up later on. Fabian Wagner. And they ended the draft with a goaltender that I think has a lot of promise in Dom DiVincentius. For me, this is a prospect who could very well become a starter later on. I mean, I watched him a lot with North Bay and I was really impressed. One more team I wanted to mention who deserves to be mentioned based on the prospects that they picked up in the 2022 draft was the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, they had really good picks. They picked up David Jiricek, Denton Matejchuk in the first round, Luca Del Bel Beluz in the second round, Jordan Dumais as one of the final picks of the third round in the 90s, who's been looking real good and is currently leading the queue in points. They drafted a goaltender that I'm really interested in Sergei Ivanov. And finally, they picked up James Fisher, who's playing in high school but looked really well as a really good defensive center. And they picked them up with their seventh round pick. So every one of their picks, again, was above market value, I believe. So those are really the five teams that I think were the big winners of the 2022 NHL draft. But that's it for today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and make us your first listen of the day. It's always much appreciated. And I will see you next time.